Hello, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 7 of the ESG Experience, the podcast about all things ESG and beyond. Whether you're an ESG expert or just dipping your toes into the ESG universe, this podcast is for you. Together, we'll navigate the alphabet soup of ESG, share strategies, and discuss industry news and trends. I'm Helee, the CRO of ESG at Conservice.
And I'm Ryan Nelson, the CEO of ESG at Conservice.
Today, we are lucky to be joined by Kellee Khalil, the Chief Development Officer of EnergyX, to discuss the current and future relationship between ESG and the lithium industry, as well as the role of lithium in achieving renewable energy targets and supporting the green energy transition. And enjoyed getting to know you quite a bit in the pre-chat, but I'm going to embarrass you a little bit here in front of our listeners to talk more about your wonderful accolades. You must be very proud. Your parents must be very proud. They must be very proud. So Kellee is a serial entrepreneur, author, and creative brand builder. As Chief Development Officer of EnergyX, she's responsible for creating and driving the overall business, brand, and marketing strategies in long-term operations and government affairs planning. She's focused on crafting the company's vision for making sustainability cool. We've been trying to do that for like 20 years. I think we did it though. It's mainstream if nothing else. I don't know if it's cool. Some people say yes, some people say no. It's mainstream. Well, you got a good contingent now that thinks it's not, but
yes.
All right, we're making sustainability cool and storytelling the narrative of EnergyX's innovative technologies necessary for the global shift to renewable energy future. Prior to that, Kellee started her first company, Loverly, a wedding planning platform for the modern age bride, at 25 years old, which I want to ask you about that. I know that's not about today, but I can totally imagine people of this day and age, elderly millennials like you and I, not Ryan, wanting to plan entire weddings like from their phone and never have to talk to another human. So that's brilliant.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Well, hold that thought. I'm not done embarrassing Kellee. She has also been profiled in a myriad of global and national media outlets as the go-to on-air marketing business expert for digital media. She's deeply passionate about the global threat to civilization caused by climate change and is committed personally and professionally to protecting our planet. And she's walking the walk. She is a novice beekeeper and has 4 hives in her apiary. So she's actually doing something, right? Very directly. So that's awesome. Welcome. Excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Great. Well, yes. Nice to meet you, Kellee. And that is an amazing bio, and you've accomplished a lot already as a millennial, even. And simply meaning that you're still young and have accomplished so much. And yeah, the beekeeping stuff is awesome. We will definitely work that into this discussion. But let's get right after it here and talk about one might suggest a disconnect between ESG and the lithium sector, or the idea that mining natural resources might have some negative impact. So we want to at least make sure, at the very least, make sure we have a lens, should we be doing it, and have a lens on how to do it responsibly. So we want to move away from fossil fuels. Is this just the next fossil fuels, or maybe tell us a little bit about the lithium sector and what we're going to do with this lithium?
Happy to. So really the mission for EnergyX is to power a clean future. That is kind of our company statement. And I think we've gotten to the point where society understands fossil fuels are bad and we need a cleaner, renewable source of energy, right? So when you think about wind, when you think about solar, no one's thinking about how are we actually storing that energy? How are we retaining that energy? And our founder and CEO, Teague, was a very early owner personally in Tesla. So he bought a Tesla, I think, in 2013. I'm now a Tesla owner, so I'm also a customer. And we've seen an explosion of electric vehicles, right, on the roads, and that's kind of become, I would say, the new norm, people driving electric vehicles. But what no one's thinking about is how are we powering those vehicles, right? Where are the raw materials coming from that are actually for the batteries of these electric vehicles? And so that's where EnergyX comes in. Our approach, our ESG strategy is not just, it's a strategy and it's something that we say publicly. It truly is ingrained into what we're doing. In the way that we develop our technology, we're always looking for more efficient, cost-effective, environmentally friendly solutions to extract lithium in a way that does not require a lot of fresh water And a lot of these locations where there is lithium deposits, specifically in South America, they're usually in rural regions where you have local indigenous communities. And so we're always thinking about how can we meet our business objectives of extracting lithium, which ultimately will help the planet become more sustainable by reducing fossil fuels, but at the same time, really be thinking about how is our work impacting the environment, the communities around us, and taking that lens in being thoughtful about how we approach our business operations.
Yeah. So over the decades, let's say maybe centuries, maybe longer, I guess the rough thing you could say is that we've gone around the world extracting natural resources for pleasure or for a good purpose or whatever it is, and have not always been responsible. I mean, to say the least, right? It's been probably terrifying.
Mining has a very bad rap, that is for sure.
Yes.
Years and
we're going to
years.
get it right this time, is what you're telling me.
That's basically our approach. I mean, I think that's part of the challenge is we're like the new kids on the block, if you will. We're a 4-year-old business. And the people that we're partnering with oftentimes are these mining operations, right? That have been around for 50, 100 years, and they have a certain way that they do things. And so there is even a mindset shift that's happening. And as we're explaining how our technology operates, like, for example, one of our, we don't just have one type of lithium extraction technology. We've developed a portfolio of DLE technologies. That's what they're called, DLE, direct lithium extraction. And depending on where the brine is in the world. So lithium comes from basically brine, which is like a salt water, right? And in that,
answered one of my questions.
Yeah. Okay. So, and oftentimes it's in parts of the world that actually have a lot of salt. So Bolivia is there's the lithium triangle, which is in Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. And there's a lot of salt deserts there. So if you've seen those beautiful, very picturesque kind of tourist photos where someone's standing and there's almost looks like they're standing on ice or snow, but it's all salt. And so essentially they pump up water from the ground, or as it rains, it precipitates and it comes up. And inside that brine is not just lithium, but it's very high concentrations of lithium, but other salts as well. And so our technology takes that brine and extracts just the lithium and pulls out the other impurities. And based on where you are in the world, whether it's South America or here domestically in the US, we actually have quite a few lithium resources here within the United States. The Salton Sea out in California, Moab in Utah, there are pretty large lithium reserves as well in those locations. And so we use our technology, like I said, to extract it out. And we really focus on our reduction of time, which means time to pump it out of the ground and then resources to do it, but also how much fresh water is required. Because in many parts of the world where there are high lithium reserves, fresh water is really hard to come by. And so if you're using fresh water to extract lithium in your processes, you're taking away from the local communities. So we really have built our technology around how can we really reduce the impact on the environment and the people around us.
So before we get to the next question, sorry, let me make sure I got this whole thing right so everyone understands what we're talking about today. We want to utilize renewable energy, right? That's the big thing. We're getting off fossil fuels. We want to use wind and solar. And we want to, big part of that is automotive cars, right? So we want battery powered cars. We know we've been using lithium batteries for a while. Batteries are everything. It goes from cars, which there's only a portion of cars that are all electric now and have these batteries, but growing dramatically. It goes to powering houses. If we want to use solar for a house, we have to have a battery somewhere. And
how are you going to store it?
It's a big battery, and then the battery technology is getting better and better, and all that sort of stuff. But to do that, all of that upstream in that supply chain is this lithium, Li, I think, on the little periodic table that we have to get and go through this process. So you're enabling, you're pretty far upstream, enabling this thing that has to happen. We got to mine this stuff. If currently that's the answer to making a battery efficient, is to have lithium to be able to do everything else that we're trying to do downstream. So EnergyX is saying, all right, you're going to help do that in a much
we're a technology solution. So we essentially go to existing mining operations and look at their current brine composition. And we say, okay, based on your brine composition and the impurities and our portfolio of technologies that we have, here's the right configuration for you that will help, yield, essentially get rid of the waste. Because right now, some of the processes are so inefficient that, for example, a lot of these in South America, they have these solar ponds that they're using literally to precipitate out the salts, right? And so it can take up to 18 months to go through this entire cycle. Our process is a continuous process, and we have like a 95% recovery rate versus some processes have a 30%. Because if it rains one day, right now you're starting over again. So it's a closed system, and we are putting our technology on top of existing operations. But there's another really big opportunity in the US, which is like produced water that's coming off of oil and gas. So there's water that they're already having to pump back into the ground, and there's lithium in that. So again, it's already a process that's currently happening through like fracking and all this other stuff, which I know people also don't love that, but the water's already there, right? That the brine opportunity is there. So if we're able to kind of extract the lithium out of that, that's another opportunity for us to get off fossil fuels faster and go more to renewable sources as quickly as possible.
Cool.
So for anyone listening who has not Google imaged a salt desert, take a moment, do it now. Super cool. I did it. I don't think I've ever seen one, or maybe I've seen photos of it, but did not realize it was a salt desert.
It's blinding. I went down to Bolivia. Yeah.
You've been probably in person, right?
Oh, it's really one of the most breathtaking things you will ever experience. We went down to Bolivia. We had a pilot plant down there. We were testing out our technology, and I had the privilege of going down there, and literally you had to wear sunscreen and sunglasses because you'll get like sunburn from the reflection. It's so bright and it's so white. And while we were down there, actually, we sat down with, I think it was 17 different community leaders from different indigenous groups to ask them, like, what are the problems that you guys are facing? What are your biggest challenges? And if we're going to be doing business here in the long term, that's part of our business approach, is connecting with local community leaders and understanding what are your biggest problems. And if we're going to be here building and making money, we want to be a big part of the community and give back and help facilitate their expansion and growth as we do business in the field.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And what did they say, by the way? What are they?
Oh, it really varied. Well, what was really cool, Helee, you'll probably love this, that it was mostly women that ran these communities. And some of these women were in their 70s and 80s, which was really awesome. These just really beautiful women. And one of the biggest challenges that they said that they were facing was the migration of their young. So you have these local kind of tribal type communities. And as soon as, their young people become of age, 15, 16, 17, they leave to go to the big cities to get education and to be part of, a bigger society. And so that was one of their biggest challenges.
And they don't come back after.
And they do not come back. So that was one of the biggest challenges. The second really was around education. So one of the reasons why they leave is because of no opportunity really from an education perspective. And then health services was another big one, especially for women. I mean, things as simple as like, feminine products, having just regular checkups, that was just not available in those kind of rural communities. So we actually, as part of our pilot program down there, EnergyX committed $50,000 to the region of Uyuni, which is where our operations were, where we partnered to essentially that $50,000 went towards 6 different schools where we were building out infrastructure. And when you go look at these schools, some of these schools did not even have walls, right? They're like a desk and chairs, or sometimes no desk and chairs. And so we're actually building out physical facilities for them, upgrading their bathrooms so that it's a safe and productive place for their young to be educated.
It's insane. Like just the kind of dichotomy of that, and then they're sitting on this treasure, right? Like this natural treasure
where there's billions and billions
of
of dollars
yeah,
and
like companies like yours coming to exploit it, and they don't have clean bathrooms. Like that's just such a the contrast there is just probably so eye-opening.
And they're very resistant because, you know, they are very much connected to the earth and the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe a lot of these areas are sacred to them. They are sacred grounds. And so going in and extracting is, you know, not something that a lot of them are comfortable with. However, they are so warm and open and sharing and understanding that, like, you know, our intention is not to come in here and to just steal all your resources and say goodbye, right? We explained to them our approach of, look, we're trying to help save the planet. We're trying to shift things towards a new sustainable green future.
Yeah.
And right here underneath your feet is one of those big opportunities, right? And so that's the conversation in South America. You know, that's happening. Simultaneously here domestically in the US, everyone loves the idea of going green. It's like, yeah, let's do it. But as soon as there's an opportunity for a mine or a well needs to be, you know, dug, no way, not in my backyard. I don't want to see it. I don't want to know about it. Push it off overseas. And that's part of why the US has really fallen behind when it comes to, you know, this kind of race for clean energy. Right? Lithium, really, we believe at EnergyX that it's a matter of national security, that this is our future energy pool. And we need to be really mindful and focused on it, not just as a company, but our government and our local communities. And we need to be open to the change and the things that potentially might come as a result. And that might mean an operation happening, you know, adjacent to your town.
Yeah. We're also like, you might know the stat better than me, but we're also our own worst enemy. Like the US per capita, like we're the highest energy users. Like we're the ones with the big trucks and like driving, you know, one person driving an enormous SUV by themselves. Like you don't see that. If you travel the world, I mean, just with your own eyeballs, you don't see it. But
if you've ever lived in LA and you've sat on the 405 freeway and you're in gridlock bumper to bumper and you look around you and every single person in their car is just one person.
You're like, alone in a car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's like what we were talking about on the pre-call is like people, they don't see it until until they literally go to fill up their car, they go to charge their car and there's no energy there. Like most people won't realize, you know, there's a good number sure of people who are being proactive like you and us who are in the industry and want to do the right thing. But there are a lot of consumers that just, I don't know, there's gas at the gas station, there's food at the grocery store. Like I'm good till I'm not. And obviously, you know, that's not going to work. I had one other question. So just like, if you can talk about the evolution of lithium batteries. So like when we've had other podcasts, we talked to some folks that do the solar panels. They've just talked about how the technology is gone, even the last decade, the last 2 decades. And then what do you think is the future? Like, are lithium batteries it? Are they going to continue to get better? Is there something else out there? And then what have you seen, you know, in your career and working in this space, you know, how far, and I like, if you know, like, tangibles, like a lithium battery used to be the size of a car and it would last an hour. Now a lithium battery is the size of my iPhone. It'll last 3 days. Like anything like that is cool to hear.
For sure. Well, I will say, you know, over the next 10 to 20 years, lithium will become one of the most highly demanded natural resources in the world. And the demand curve is growing so exponentially and the supply is just not there. So I've talked about our approach on the DLE side of how we extract the technology, but on the other side of EnergyX, so our kind of tagline is from brine to battery. So we extract the lithium from brine, right? And we have that now, which is, and then we refine it. But more importantly, it needs to go in batteries, and we need to build better batteries that, you know, charge faster, last longer, and essentially have a longer actual life cycle, right? So there's usually with batteries only a certain number of charges. So anyone who has an iPhone probably remembers their first iPhone. You would charge it, right? And then it would last you maybe like 6 hours, right? And then, you know, as we've, you know, technology has gotten better and better, you know, your iPhone battery life is longer and longer. However, the older your phone gets, then the charge starts to get shorter again, right? Because that means the battery is getting fatigued. And so in order for us to really shift and rely on these kind of cleaner technologies, we need the batteries to last a lot longer. Because again, I mean, there's a whole industry just on lithium recycling of like taking out old batteries and breaking them down and recycling them. That's not our business, but we do have really incredible team here. Dr. Nick Grundish, who worked with John Goodenough, who was the inventor of lithium ion, back in, I think it was the 80s, right? And he was one of his last PhDs who learned and worked underneath him. And so he's leading up our battery development division. And that's essentially our entire mission, is to make sure they charge faster, they last longer, not just from the charge, but also the life cycle of the battery, so that we're not just extracting these natural resources, using them, and then, okay, throw it away and start over again, right? We're trying to figure out how do we close the loop to actually make the cycle continuous and truly sustainable. Now, when it comes to like the evolution of the battery, I'm not the expert on that. I've heard our CEO give quite a few of those examples of like the first computer. Think about how big it was, right? It was the size of a room, and now it's in our own cell phones. But one stat that I can give you, which is a really kind of powerful visual, is that if you look at your iPhone and you hold it, it takes 10,000 iPhone batteries to charge one electric vehicle.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
wow.
did read that. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. That's good visual. Thank you.
Yes.
Wait, sorry, Ryan, I know you're dying. One quick thing. So you said from Brian to battery, our tagline, we're from build to boardroom. So it just
oh, cool.
resonated with me. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yes. Utility data has value from the bill to the boardroom.
Yeah.
Well, you did mention, and to fully close the loop, what do we do when these things are at the end of life? And especially now, as the tech keeps improving, nobody wants the big old batteries anymore. So there is a concern there. I understand that's not your business right now, but I trust as you participate in making batteries that you think about fully closing the loop. Otherwise, you'll be part of my give back program, which is if you made something and I'm done with it, I'm just dropping it off at your door and being like, you made this thing, it doesn't work anymore.
You have
to figure out how to get rid of it.
I need to participate in some level of give back, because I have so many cords. I'm going to pull up one right here. And you just have cords that you're like, what are they for? They need to figure out what they're doing with all those
go
cords.
Drop them off at Best Buy and be like, you made these and now they're silly. So you have to deal with them.
Back. Yeah, we stay really up to date with kind of the emerging technologies. Our business development team is always out at all the conferences, from not just mining, but also mobility, right? Like, what are the ways people are getting around, to charging, to figure out like who are those quintessential partners that we need to have to kind of close that loop from a recycling perspective or from a manufacturing perspective. And our goal would be to design a better battery so that your vacuum machine, your home vacuum machine, your Dyson that you're using, charges longer and lasts longer, right? So you're not constantly having to put it on the charger. And I don't know if you guys have a Dyson vacuum, but I do. And the handheld one, you got a good 15 minutes and then you got to put it back on the charger. That's just how it works. So we could, help to
do use it, Kelly. I do use it. I apparently have never used it for 14 minutes has been my max, because I've never
it's never run out. Well, maybe you haven't used it that if you
my attention span for vacuuming is 14 minutes, I guess. Nuggets, but interesting. No, but the thing that I was dying to comment on, Helee, Kelly, you talked about even when you were telling the story about working with the local communities, the tension was, I could feel the tension of you're in there and they're saying, but we really live off the land, we're people of the land and we understand it. And the immediate reaction is, don't touch it, leave it alone. Like, they know what they're talking about. But I've been reading a little bit about utilitarianism and the concept that the greatest ethical choice is the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So I have to almost put that in my head and remind myself, yes, we're politely asking these communities to participate because it's what's better for a bigger problem that we're trying to solve. So we're going to do our best. collaborate with you, take some of this stuff, and this ultimately it's part of the bigger picture here of saving the planet and getting off of fossil fuels and renewable energy. So yeah, it's hard to, just the tension that comes in, and when you say those things, it's tough to get there for a lot of people.
Well, Ryan, you said a really important word there, and it was participation. And, you know, I think for so long, a lot of these communities have not been part of the development and the conversation and have not been considered. And that's part of why there's so much resistance, which is understandable. If you're just going to come into someone's land and take it and build on it or do whatever you want with it and cut a deal with a government that for them might seem very far away, right? That there's no, participation is key. And there has been quite a few stories, if you look into what's happened in South America, of literally the indigenous people putting like blocks in the roads, right? Like starting lighting cars on fire. They're like, no, we're trying to protect our land. And I was just so delighted and overwhelmed by the response when we said, hey, we want to have a conversation. We're going to host a luncheon. If you want to come, we want to listen and learn from all of you and hear what your concerns are. One woman traveled for 13 hours by bus to come meet with us. I mean, you know, there is an absolute willingness to be part of the conversation and to participate. And I think companies just need to be willing to listen and to open that door to have that conversation. So, and look, you're not going to make everyone happy, right? That's going to be a challenge. There's going to be compromises, but that's part of the conversation.
And it feels like such a win-win too, compared to, you know, how things used to be done, right? Like we're coming in with our big trucks, we're digging up your land, move aside or get crushed by our trucks. Like, or you sit down with these people, you treat them like human beings, you give back to their communities, right? Which is like, if you say $50,000 to give back to the community to help the schools or get clean bathrooms or get facilities, medical care, whatever it is, that's great, right? Because you feel like you're doing something good. They have to see that you're giving back to their community, and then you still benefit from whatever it is you wanted to benefit from in the first place for the business. You just do it in a way that's probably less expensive. I mean, if you're just looking at dollars and cents, definitely more altruistic, but probably in the long run less expensive if you're just willing to invest
absolutely
to the community.
You can build relationships. You could hire people from the communities. They can be a part of the project, right? Rather than bringing. I mean, we have a whole part of our website. If you go to EnergyX.com and go to our sustainability tab, I mean, our tagline is sustainability is sexy, because we really think that it's, you know, such an important part of how we approach everything. And we talk about our environmental impact. But if you go to the very bottom, you can see, you know, how we activated this community outreach project that we did for a pilot, not commercial agreement. We were there for, I think, 120 days from start to finish, testing our technology on the ground in Uyuni, Bolivia. And so just for that testing phase is when we said, okay, we want to come in here and have this conversation with the local community. Because if we do decide and we do end up signing a commercial agreement and working in the region, we need to have the relationships. And this is not, again, just for showing, which actually was interesting if you read the media that happened locally around it. There was a big narrative around us potentially like bribing and trying to buy our way in. And that was not the intention at all. The intention was very clear. Even after we've left Bolivia with we're still following through with our grant. We're going through, we're doing it, and we're continuing to support as we promised and committed. So we have you can see the whole video. You can see the our approach to what we're doing down there. And that was really our pilot too for our ESG strategy of how are we going to activate in this small way as we're piloting our technology. How are we piloting our community, social, environmental, relationships?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying too that you talk to the actual humans in the community as opposed to just the government, because I can imagine that being an issue.
There's always a disconnect,
over the history
even
with
here.
doing this.
Not just in South America, here as well in the U.S. Right? It's like people. I mean, I don't know if you guys know who your congressperson is or your senators are. You feel like you know them well and you can call them, but like the community it's everything's local, right? It's who do you know, and who's your, who's your go-to if something's going down. You're not going to call the congressman. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
mine.
and no, I totally understood. Yeah, I can see that being, and then you come in and you're like, well, didn't the Congress people tell you that, we were doing this and it's all set up, we have a nice deal. Yeah, no, I can see the disconnect there. Well, and to, if somebody wants to challenge, your sincerity and whatnot to the commitment. We were looking over your profile, of course, and I want to talk about two other awesome things among maybe others that you've done in your career. I was really caught with changing gears a little bit, but with a technology I think on the board called Translator, a DEI learning platform. Like I looked around at it looks really cool.
Yeah. So that's a company. So Translator, I got involved with, gosh, I think like 6 years ago. I met the founder and CEO, who is a trans woman. And as she was going through her transition, and she had been running a LinkedIn training technology venture back as a man, right? And then decided, had a realization, said, I'm coming out. And that's when I met her, and we became friends. And I was actually mentoring her as she was helping to build the business, because the business is so needed today. And it's really, this sounds kind of cliche to say, but it's teaching empathy in organizations, that teaching people to lead with empathy, and there's so much internal bias that happens with our words that we don't even realize. And so they've built a really powerful AI powered technology that is meant to train leaders and individuals and companies on how to lead better, how to be more inclusive, and to build organizations that are more welcoming to all people. And it's something that I've been on the board for the last 3 years, and they've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world piloting. And you would be surprised to see how in demand this type of DEI training and technology really is. People are hungry for it. We're ready for change. We're ready to figure out how to run companies in a more empathetic way, because at the end of the day, companies are made up of people, and happy people do good work.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry, go ahead, Helee.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought, and then I have a different but related question.
I did like an hour training on, empathetic conversation and better leading or whatever. But yes, I could see like having an ongoing translator and app and, way to continue getting it right would be pretty cool. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So you're solving, well, you have a question about that, Helee? Because I have a great bridge.
Mine's just really quick. I was just going to ask you, coincidence that the CEO of Translator
Not related.
I was again. Is there a relationship?
There's no relationship.
No.
It's
really?
it's really funny. There's no relationship between the two. But yeah, Natalie Egan is the founder of Translator Inc., which their website is translator.company. Teague Egan is the CEO of EnergyX. And it's really funny. Completely unrelated, but I have Egan's calling me, all day, every
it's another
day.
Egan, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. No relation.
Okay, so you're saving the world with EnergyX. You're making companies more empathetic, which is valuable and awesome. So solving social challenges. Next thing you're going to tell me is you have some answer to the pollination challenges that we have.
Well, I'm just trying to do my part, but I lived in Brooklyn and in Manhattan for 12 years. And during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to buy 5 acres upstate in the woods. And my dream of having a mini apiary came to fruition. I have, over the last 10 years, I don't know what shifted, but I started to just kind of notice the amount of waste, whether it's like I go to Whole Foods or I go to the grocery store, and, and you're unpacking your groceries and you see how much plastic there is, or, cleaning my house and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much, paper towels. I started to be really, really aware of the amount of personal waste and impact that I had as a human being. And then you multiply that by the billions of people on the planet. And I started looking into like, what is it that I can do that could potentially have an impact, right, outside of recycling and all of these things. And I got really connected to and interested in beekeeping because of the fact that 30% of all of our food that we eat as humans is pollinated by bees. And a lot of people don't know, but we have a colony collapse disorder that's happening where we are losing bees like you cannot believe. I think we're at like 50% of the bees that we had 10 years ago. And I was really, people, again, they're not thinking about it, but it's going to cause major food insecurity in the next 10 years, like very, very near future, if we don't solve this issue. And so I've become a backyard beekeeper. Everyone always asks me if we eat the honey. I mean, of the 120 frames that we have, we'll take 2 to taste and to give to some of our friends and family. But for the most part, we're doing the beekeeping to help increase the bee populations. And this last year, so we have 4 hives. All 4 of our hives swarmed twice, which is unheard of, which means when a hive gets big enough, usually what beekeepers do is they add another box. So the hive just keeps growing into their like box system, and you keep adding the boxes and adding the boxes. You have to do it at the right time. Otherwise, if the bees run out of space, the hive splits, they swarm. Half of the bees stay, and the other half of bees go out into the wild and they build a new hive.
So you want them to swarm?
Well, yeah. So if
It
you were
needs to
doing
happen twice, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So if you're like,
Cool.
if you're doing it, if you're
keeping it, you just keep giving them things.
yeah,
like
if you're
you
doing
want
it to
them
produce
go.
honey, yeah, you want to keep all those bees and you want them, but if you're, but it's like sad when you see them. So, I mean, you get really happy, but you're like, oh my God, they're going to leave. Are they going to make it? Because only 50% of swarms will make it. They'll find a suitable place. And the reason why, the number one reason why the bee population is dwindling is because of pesticides. And it's not just commercial pesticides, it's people who want to have green grasses, who are spraying weed killer and using genetically modified, grass seeds because they want to have that perfect green lawn. But wildflowers, which are now branded as weeds, are bee food. That's what they live on. So if you want to do your part, let your grass grow. Let your grass grow. Let the wildflowers grow, because that is the bees' food, and they need to have a diverse diet in order to build up immunity. And dandelions, which are the yellow ones that come out of any, that is a really, really powerful food for them. So, I actually, in the spring, I just get a bunch of wildflowers that are perennial and I throw them all over and I let my weeds grow. And then I also went door to door to my neighborhood with a little sign, like, I'm keeping bees. Please don't spray your lawn. And if you do,
oh my gosh,
call me. And if they spray their lawn, then I cover the hives with wet towels so that the bees think it's raining and they won't leave. Because what happens is they'll go out, they'll get the pesticides, they'll bring it back in, and then so it's really sad. But I love my bees. It's actually not that intimidating to be a beekeeper. They're actually not that much work. They're very self-sufficient. And so there are tons of local beekeeper communities online that if you're interested, you can do online training. But yeah, and they're also very friendly. They're not going to sting you unless you're messing with them or you're attacking them. They're very, very docile. So I think I've only been stung twice, and that's when I'm like literally in the hive trying to like inspect them to see how they're doing, which
do you have the suit? Do you wear the suit?
I have the suit. Yeah. I the way I was trained was to not have the suit and to kind of, they really want you to get your personal vibration to a way where the bees won't sting you. And that's, I was like, oh, I can do it. I thought it was really, really zen. And then the first time I got stung, it was in my face. And I was like, all right, that's enough for me. I'm going to wear at least the veil.
Yeah.
Because it took me like 5 days to recover. I was like so swollen. I looked like one of the characters from Whoville.
I pulled up, I remember when I first learned about this Reddit, it was like a Time magazine article and it was on the cover. And in my head, it was recently, but I found it. It was in 2013, and it talks about the price we'll pay if we don't figure out what's killing the honeybee. So this is like 10 years ago. And I feel like there still hasn't just been enough done. So this is a problem that Time magazine is aware of 10 years ago. So meaning mainstream public is aware of it 10 years ago? And like, aside from like, what are we doing enough? Is it just, I mean, your backyard beekeeping, my girls will take the dandelions and blow them at the end of the season. So they spread a few little dandelion seeds, but like, what else is any major industry doing anything about it as well?
Well, this is going to make a lot of our nut milk people not happy, but what people don't realize is one of the biggest industry that is destroying the bee population is the almond industry, because basically almonds in California, which California uses a lot of pesticides at the vineyards and also at the almond fields, when they bloom is in a time of the year, there's no longer enough bees in California to actually do the pollination for all the almond orchards that are in California. So what happens? Commercial beekeepers stack up their hives on these big semi trucks, and they drive their hives from the East Coast, Florida, wherever it is across the country, all the way to California. And for like 90 days during this pollination period, you would have somewhere up to 70 to 80% of North American bees, because of commercial beekeepers, are in California to pollinate the almond trees.
Wow.
And the problem with that is bees are social creatures, and they also have diseases and viruses. So one of the things outside of the pesticides are weakening their immune systems. But then secondarily, there are these mites called varroa mites that basically they're almost like a lice or a tick, and they eat basically holes into the bees' bodies, and it's really sad. But basically, they jump from bee to bee while they're kind of pollinating together, and at night the bees go back to their hives. They bring back the mites. The mites lay babies inside the larva of the bees, inside the pupae. They feast on the pupae, and the next thing you know, you're not beekeeping, you are mite keeping. And that is why we're seeing a massive decline. And these mites are resistant to most types of treatments. So there's no treatments that really kill the mites that don't hurt the bees. So
commercial beekeepers are doing the wrong thing. Is anyone is anyone helping, or is it just folks like you and online communities that are trying to grassroots do what we can?
It's all grassroots, because there's not enough political buy-in on the state legislative level to make some of these chemicals illegal. So it's commercial beekeeping is not helping.
Wow.
Backyard beekeepers are going to be the saviors. So if you see a bee, don't squash it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I won't squash it. That's for sure.
I read about just recently about how the social creatures that they are. There was a test where they had them learn something to get to some food, and the ones that figured out if you hit the blue thing, then they would go back to the swarm. Is it?
Yep. Their hive. Yep.
Yeah. Then they tested the other ones, and they could do the thing faster than one that never learned. Yeah.
The bees wiggle their little bodies. Yeah, they wiggle their little bodies. So they come back to their hive, and they'll actually do like almost like a little dance that tells them where the water is, where the food is. And they basically teach the other bees, because a bee only lives for about 21 days. They literally, and so when you see bees, exactly. So they're passing the information along, and they work themselves.
Almost.
Correct.
Yeah, together. But wow, yeah, no, that's amazing. And I don't think there's anything more we can ask of you, Kellee. We
went really deep on bees.
We did.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
And we'll have to do another session so I can ask you about the online weddings. Because we
didn't even get to weddings. We didn't get to weddings. So we'll do another session.
But second continuation, yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing what you're doing. And I feel like people have awareness of the bee thing now, but we still don't have the education. Like, I didn't know those things you were saying were the problems. I just know, oh yeah, there's a bee problem, but I didn't know. So maybe we'll get that education soon. But that brings us to a really quick game. So we're not going to stop here. I got something good. So all you have to do is tell me, this is called Beans or Beer, but I'm changing a little bit. Is this thing, I'm going to give you the name of an organization, an artisan maker of something. Is it closer to coffee or beer, this thing they make? Is it closer to coffee or beer? It's called Right Bee Cider.
Beer.
It's closer to beer, but cider, it's cider. It doesn't claim to be beer, but it's cider, but it's fermented cider. It's an alcoholic adult beverage. But it's Right, R-I-G-H-T, B, B-E-E, cider. Right Bee Cider. But it sounds like Right Bee Cider. It's
Oh, right
I think
beside
it's a
her.
husband and wife team, like right beside her, and she kind of
Cute.
said, whatever. It's my friend knows them, and whatever. But they're in Chicago, and they have an apiary. Their roof, where they make their cider, is an apiary, and they use. Hopefully, they're letting some swarms go, also. But they use some of the honey for some of their cider. So,
Cool.
but you were correct. So, congratulations on winning the game.
Ding, 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 ding.
Good job. You win nothing but the pride of the win. That's all. There's no
Love
prize.
That's it.
Yep. And it's only about like half people get it right. So there should be some pride associated with the win. It's good.
Great.
All right. So this has been another episode of the ESG Experience podcast. We appreciate our listeners for listening. If you enjoyed your time with us, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast directory. There's a new episode every month. And we will catch you next time. If you do want to continue the conversation between episodes, follow us on your favorite social media channel at # ESG Experience. And Kellee, sometimes at the end of these podcasts, I'm done spending time with people, but I want to spend more time with you. I have so many more questions. You're so interesting and you've done so much. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kellee. Thank you, listeners.